back with another episode of Pottawattamie County Routes. Hi, I'm Todd Studer. One of our friends here at the studios on Willow and all across local stream media is Travis Waldstein of Aire Serv Heating and Air Conditioning and Waldstein Plumbing. And I was able to have a conversation with him recently about what it's like going around a lot of these rural communities that we have in Pottawattamie County, and what is with the different plumbing, or it might be air conditioning or HVAC, that in these older houses, how many different things do you need to know? Because you've got technology going from the over 100 years ago up through now. And you're going to have a lot of fixes that have happened over the years. So how much does he actually need to know and train his techs on? And it's a pretty interesting conversation, and I thought we'd bring that to you today. So Travis Waldstein is back with us today on Pottawattamie County Routes. Finding the right care for a loved one, it can feel overwhelming, and Assisted Living Locators is here to help. Jean Bonker brings you more than 30 years of experience serving families and has personally navigated the challenges of elder care. She understands the questions, the emotions, and the weight of these decisions. Jean becomes your advocate, guiding you through options with clarity, compassion, and personal support every step of the way. Call Assisted Living Locators, 402-690-5467. The Jenny Edmondson Foundation believes healthcare goes beyond hospital walls through its Caring for Our Communities initiative. The foundation helps high-risk, low-income, and underserved individuals access resources that remove barriers to better health and long-term well-being. And coming up this Friday, the foundation will also bring the community together through Dance to the Beat, a signature event that raises critical funds for uninsured and underinsured heart patients. Those funds help provide treatment, medication, and rehabilitation, along with life-saving support. Learn more, get involved, or support the mission at jehfoundation.org. So a lot of what you do, obviously you do work in the metropolitan area, Council Bluffs, Omaha, down to Bellevue, different places like that. And I'm kind of looking at the plumbing side of this, because this is where you're wide open, and you don't have a territory that you have to be concerned about.
I don't have a franchise order to deal with.
Right. So when you are going out into the more rural communities, and these houses typically are going to have some more age to it. Now, some communities, no. I mean, Trainer has a lot of newer houses.
Yeah.
But Minden's starting to get some, because a lot of these are being replaced. Yeah. But how many different ways do you have that you need to do something based on whatever the technology was at the time? Because you're going to go into houses that are over 100 years old. You go into some that were built in the 50s, some built in the 70s. So how much knowledge do you and your staff need to have in order to be able to service all of these different places?
You know what? You have to have a lot, or at least understand of what happened back at that time. I mean, really, if you start looking at code enforcement per se, code enforcement didn't really start. I got into the trade in 94, and, some of your bigger cities would have some code enforcement. So Omaha, Council Bluffs, you would have some sort of enforcement. And as far as cities get done, but you go into these smaller towns or cities, Billy Bob's Plumbing Shop or whatever it was, and I'm not knocking it, but they had their way to do it, and, it worked. Whether it, by today's standard, was it up to code? No, it was fine when it was done 25 years ago. Well, the reason we have codes is because things were done there 25, 50, or 75 years ago. Maybe there's a problem, or they blew up something, or somebody got sick, or whatever else, which is stuff we deal with in plumbing, is huge in understanding why. One of the bigger things we run into, is it lead? Do they have a lead water service? And that a lot of your older homes, you go up to, I was over at Oakland the other day looking at something. I mean, there's a town with a lot of older homes. Even Glenwood's got areas of Glenwood where there's, and Council Bluffs, all these smaller towns have older homes. Well, I've had a lead water service for 50 years, and I've drank the water, and look how I turned out. And then I look at him, I says, yeah, look how I turned out. You do, but you have to understand what is, and some of the stuff you might kind of go, okay, you had a lot of galvanized water lines, not a lot of water pressure. For whatever reason, the town plumber, HVAC guy, and in the small towns, a lot of guys do it all. I mean, kind of what we're doing now. where they do it all, and they used, galvanized for gas line. That's kind of frowned upon using gas. It's just like, um, it's just kind of like using, it's just kind of like using, copper line for natural gas. Now you can use it for propane, but it's really frowned upon for, natural gas. So when you go into a home or a business, with that, that is huge. I mean, that's really kind of a big thing that we have to look at and understand. Chimney stack or vent stacks for plumbing in a house. We're doing a house down on, I think it's Apache today, and I mean, this house was built what, 1940s, to where the stack, it was a cast iron stack, and of course, they led the lead plus up. Well, the stack broke and fell in, so we got to go back in and replace the stack. Now, obviously, it's lead, so you have to deal with that. Or sometimes, asbestos. That's the other thing you got to run into. So, and realistically, it was the technology at the time. Did it work? 100%. But things change. We find out that stuff we did maybe wasn't safe, or there's issues with it. Even PVC, we use PVC every day for HVAC and plumbing. We use PVC for venting furnaces. We use it for condensate drains. Of course, on the plumbing side, you use it for drain waste and venting of appliances. PEX now, even water lines, it's a PVC, but it's essentially another version of that product. So yeah, so you have to understand, what was there, why you're changing it, what the code requirement was something that was done 50 years ago correct? Or a lot of times you run an old house, especially if it's been ran down, usually there's structural issues too that we have to deal with to put this stuff back together. And that's, it's one of them deals. If you don't maintenance it, if you don't take care of stuff, it does become a huge problem. So,
Do you have bring this up? I know you're big on training. You schedule time for staff training, and is the older homes part of it? Because from a layman, you would think, oh, it's just training on how to install a new air conditioning unit, or whatever it might be. But a lot of it is, you have younger people working for you that weren't even a glimmer in anybody's eye when these houses were being built and this technology was being used.
oh, 100% you have to. And I mean, to give you an idea, I got on this trade in the 1990s, early 90s. My uncle has been in it since the 70s. We talk about R22 refrigerant back when I got into the trade was the only refrigerant, blah, 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 blah. Well, now R22 is being, and if you have someone come new into the trade today, if they see an R22 unit, in their mind, it's time for them to replace that unit because it's R22. Government has said blah, 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 blah. They're no longer making it. Another great one in Iowa, Iowa company Lennox, made the Lennox Pulse. And if you go over Southwest Iowa back in the 90s, everybody and their dog was selling the Lennox Pulse because it is the greatest thing since sliced bread and blah, 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 blah. Well, now you go drive around and, Lennox stopped making the Pulse back in the mid 90s, and then they stopped supporting it in the early to mid 2000 or, 2000s. And now we're hitting center 2026, and you run into an old relic is what it is at this point. And they might get a new tech that runs them and they go, what is this? It looks different than any other furnace you ever
Right.
seen. So you bring it into the shop and you pull it apart and say, okay, guys, this is here. This was cool technology this time, but here's what its failure point was and why they no longer made this furnace. And there's been several variations, of that. And, usually that's what happens. Either A newer technology comes along that's better, or B, they find out there was a flaw with that, with trying that technology. They come back and they do something else. So you have to have them discussions with techs because they'll come and walk in and they'll go, well, what's this? Oh yeah, that's old school. It's blood. That's where I become most beneficial. I hate to admit this at this point. Oh yeah, this is what we did with these in the mid 1990s. Here's how it's wired. Here's what it does. And they're like, look at me like, what? You guys used to do? We listen, listen. You had to, sometimes, as I had to say, farmer fix it, or backyard ingenuity stuff sometimes to make things work. But and so when the younger kids says, younger adults see this, they're getting to the trade, they're probably not going to see a lot of it, but it sure makes a whole lot more sense for them to see it, understand what it is, so that way, hey, next time we're out there, they know what's going on with it.
Well, it's going to be something that I'm sure is repeated
Oh,
just in the area where you work, because there's so many of these older houses in these small communities. You look around, all of the small towns in Pottawattamie County, it is a lot of them, don't have a newer house anywhere in town.
no. Well, and here's the thing, and listen, I'm going to be very transparent when I say this, and it seems like in the world today, and I'm probably as guilty of this as anybody, to an extent. Um, the days of someone just, hitting it with a screwdriver or hammer or whatever, yeah, you can get lucky doing that, but the reality there is that you have to have a technical mindset. The thing what you have to understand is you don't always know what a person's situation. You don't know what their money situation is. You don't know what their personal situation is. So you walk into a home and business. There's companies that are out there that tell you it's 12 years old, furnace is 12 years old, water heater's 10 years old, blah 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 blah. We just have to replace it. It's old. I got people that got 40-year-old air conditioners out there that are working just fine. Okay, you know what? I'm not one to tell me, and I can say pros and cons. I always believe in pros and cons. So you talk to that client or that customer about that, and you give them choices. And you talk to them about good and bad. Okay, we can repair this. Here's what it is. But because of X, Y, and Z, I'm seeing this and this. And at least talk to the customer about it and educate them and give them some options on it. You know, because sometimes repairing it is sometimes the cheapest option for a customer, but it's not the best option. But they don't know what they don't know. And so, but they have to make the decision at the end of the day that they're most comfortable with. And I think that is one of the deals within business and talk with customers in the customer service world is find out what the pain point is. If you're there, be the professional, find the problem or the repair, and then give the customer choices. Don't say, "Oh, it's old; it's got to be replaced," because that's always the old age. Or they'll rig you up a stupid bill that's, "Oh, we got $5,000 of repairs and the truck ain't safe to drive," and blah blah blah. And we've always heard them car dealership stories, and then they're like, they say, "We can't let you leave here without signing a liability release." Blah blah blah. Nobody wants to be in that boat. Um, you know, with what we do, um, I don't like to shut off. I, I've never, I mean, I've had air conditioners go bad and you shut them off because the thing don't work. I have had to shut people's furnaces off when it's really cold because it's not safe. It's like, listen, if you keep running this thing, you're gonna kill yourself or it's gonna kill you. I mean, and unfortunately, well, it's cold. Yeah, it's cold, but if you're dead, you're gonna be cold too. You have to have that discussion, and so when you have that discussion, you also have to give the customer, it out, or at least, hey, you know what? Hey, this furnace is out. It's whatever. We got temporary heaters. We can do this. We can do that for you. I want to empathize and help them because usually what happens is it's a panic situation, and I get it. I mean, listen, when my power goes out in my house, it's like the world comes in. My wife can't do ancestry. I get it.
You
Okay,
don't
maybe.
you don't have a generator hooked up directly to her computer and
Well,
being able to handle the internet?
I have a generator that runs my property. Yes, I do. So I do now because after 2021 or 2022, we were without power for about 10 hours, and my house got down to 53 degrees. And I was at work all day, and I came home, and the power had literally just came on, and she was mad about it. And I'm like, I've tried to tell her for 2 years, let's put a generator in. You know what I didn't have to do after that night? Talk to her again about putting in a generator. So, but people want choices. People want choices. People want, um, you know, you want to give them, as far as being a decision maker, and see what's best for them. Listen, if a 20-year-old system is working fine, or a piece of equipment, I'm not going to tell you have to replace it. I mean, if it's in great shape and it hasn't hardly been used, or you take good care of it, it's like anything else. You take care of a 30-year-old car, and it looks great and it drives great. Yeah, you're not going to go take that thing to the junkyard. It's worth something. But there's also a time to where, there's an economic sense, and then there's a economic sense of doing it, but there's also a financial position where you're at. I mean, if you just lost your job and there's no income coming in, you owe money to everybody in the country. Guess what? Buying a furnace is probably, or a water heater or whatever, is not in your future. And so you have to be empathetic to understand that situation, and understand that not everybody lives in the same moment that you do, and that's the sometimes it gets to be the interesting part of our trade. Do I love it? It's the hard conversations, but it's no different going to the doctor. It's no different going to the dentist. It's the part of the world that no one likes bad news, but if you have a solution, it makes life a lot easier, at least to give the people a choice. So,
Yeah, meeting people where they're at. I think
yeah.
that's it should be a rule for just about anybody in any business. Listen to what their needs are.
Well, listen to what your needs are. And here's the deal. You know what? If I have a customer that spends, let's say I'll just throw a number, say $200 every other year with me. He's got a 10 to 15-year-old system, and he knows he's got some issues, but he's just going to spend a little bit here and there, and it runs, and he's okay with that. Listen, I'm not going to be one to badger him for that. If he calls me in 10 years after he spent $1,000 with me, and he wants me to do X, Y, and Z, that means just as much to me that I've built a trust and relationship with that customer or that person. I mean, they're a person first and they're a customer. So that we built a relationship. Hey, they trust me. They know I'm trying to do right by them. And, I mean, that doesn't always happen, but you'd like to think if you're doing it right, it's a way to do business. But unfortunately, I think sometimes I think it's forgotten in all business. So it's not just HVAC or plumbing. I think in any business, you're a customer, you're a number, but at the end of the day, no offense when it says, if I got 1,000 Todd Studers that I'm doing work for and doing stuff for, and you provide a good experience, well, hopefully, them people are going to tell their friends and family, and that, hey, this is how they do business. And anybody that's worth a salt I think tries to do that. But man, there's a lot of big money between private equity and corporations, and that want to put a lot of stuff out there, if you know what I'm saying.
Now, I've been doing a lot of episodes on both of my shows that I do about business and doing business in a small town or doing business in a smaller community. And one of the things that keeps coming back over and over for me is if your metric is nothing but money and you focus on that as we are successful because we hit X amount of dollars, or we are a failure because we hit Y amount of dollars, you miss the point to the whole thing. Such as with what I do, I am an online media outlet. And if my focus is nothing but sales, then where's the content?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the focus with that? For me, the money end of it, like you're talking about, is there if I'm doing everything else correctly. Mm-hmm. That is a barometer for me to be able to tell how well my content is doing. It's not the barometer itself.
Yeah.
So, that cannot be the goal. It has to be just the result of it. And that's the way that I approach things. Otherwise, it just turns into, well, I need to spend 8 hours a day selling. And what am I doing? What is it that I'm selling? Well, I don't have anything to sell, but yet I keep trying to sell it.
Yeah. Well, you're 100% right in that. I was going to make some remark about the Falcons, but I'll leave you alone this week.
Oh, please. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
But no, in all seriousness, no, there's I saw this. And listen, I don't read a whole lot. I mean, if you want to tell me to read self help books and all that stuff, I got news for you. Keep your books. If you have an audio series, send it to me because I'll listen to it. But
Right.
if you want me to sit there and read it, these eyes here, only read so much. And it's like, okay, I can only do so much. So just, that's kind of with where I sit with things. So, um, but, when it comes to, like what we're talking about here, you just, you if it's about money first, it's a problem.
Mm.
But here's the deal: it's like if you're a person. Listen, if money is a driving factor behind why someone wants to come or go, I get that. You know, if somebody's doing X and doing Y and doing Z correctly, if money's their number one gain or push, then I have to look at where their price. And listen, I want to make money like everybody else. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, poor me, I'm broke," or this. You got to have money to live. And listen, it's a hell of a lot easier to do stuff when you have money versus when you're flat ass broke. And I think everybody's been there at that point in their
Hmm.
life. But if money's your only goal, you're going to be a pretty miserable person. You know, dollars are important, but are they profitable dollars? What are you doing in the community? What are you doing for your customers? What are
Hmm.
you doing for your employees? I mean, in my company here, look at my W-2, I'm by no means the highest paid person in the company. Yeah, my wife's always been the breadwinner in our house. I will tell you that. We've been married for 29 years, and she's always made more money than what I do, and some people would have a real ego about it. I don't care, but there's lots of other things that I bring to the table. Believe it or not, my wife might tell you some days not, but
Well, she
realistic.
has told me that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if it's my good looks or my charm, or my political views, but that's a story for another day. So, but I mean, realistically, what do you bring to the table? Why do your employees work for you? And so you have to. I think just in business and how the way you operate. I mean, Todd, people do business with you, but not because you're a Falcons fan, and not because you are a medium. You're not out selling, we could do this or we can do that, if you know what I'm saying, as far as your sponsorship stuff.
You left a word out there, by the way. They don't do business with me only because I'm a Falcons fan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
it's part of it
yeah,
because they see the good taste. They understand just how important it is to want to put your loyalty behind a quality organization. So they understand all of that, but it's
that,
not just that.
that's spelled with a KW, right? Quality, Kualidy. Is that how that's spelled? So no, but in all seriousness, they do this because of what you bring to the table, because of what you opt for what you, and like I said, Lord knows I'd love to give you a bad time. I mean, I'm always teasing you, but realistically, you bring value to your clients, and you generally the people you deal with, they don't care how much you know until they know that you care. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's how you do business. You could be the best podcaster in the world, but if you don't give two hoots about the people you're working with, you're not successful. You haven't, you haven't, turned, your morning coffee and your podcast room we started 2 years ago. Where you're sitting there talking about, can we get an app that's all the Council Bluffs teams, and can we do this and can we do that, and how do we put this together? We sat a Saturday afternoon in a bar here in Council Bluffs and kind of talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And now you look at 2 years later, you're kind of okay. You got a sports show that you're developing, and you've also got, you've teamed up with Kyle and his media stuff, and you've grown this to a point to where, where you got local stream media, and I got a smart ass nickname for it.
Yeah, I know.
Like I said, that's what happens when you hang out with plumbers. They come out plumbing humor. But no, in all seriousness, you take a look at what you've grown with that. So you got people doing their individual podcasts. You got your local roots. You got your morning coffee. You got your Mills County. You got a veterans deal. 2 years ago, when we were sitting there at Barley's and Council Bluffs, we're kind of talking about this app. I don't know if this is what you envision, but
No.
I gotta believe what you've done is way beyond that. And the reason you'd be able to do that is A, people know you care. B, you put out a good product. Three, you don't judge, although you should probably judge me a little bit more harshly. But I mean, what they see on here is what they see when you're out in public, when you're with Diane, when you're doing your other stuff that you're doing. And so, and that goes a long ways. They may never spend a dime with you, but if someone walks up to you, let's say you're down at the chamber in a coffee, says, "Oh yeah, you're the guy that does that daily podcast that I watch every day," or "Yeah, I heard you talking to so and so." Yeah, so they may not directly spend money with you per se, but you have someone that got their attention, then they're going to do business with them, which invariably, hopefully, will come
Mhm.
back to where that people want to do more content or more business with you guys. And I say you guys because you got Carlene, obviously, and you got Kyle, and and it's going to continue to grow. I mean, from where you're at, you know. I know 2 years ago you weren't planning on having a staff of three and being in a bougie office on the third floor of the Willow Building and be like a mini celebrity at Council Bluffs. I don't think you saw any of that. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, my career has always been walking through doors that I didn't see when I started the path.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have talked about it before that when I first formed a company, Todd Studer Productions, I went down to the courthouse and I filed the paperwork and I paid them $5, I think, in order to be able to do that. The only reason I did it was because the bank needed that for me to open a business account. And I wanted to be able to keep my business money and my personal money separate because my accountant said, "Hey, you need to do that."
Yeah.
So open a business account. I was doing audiobooks back then.
Mm-hmm.
And the money that was coming in, that's where it went. And that was what my job was. I was auditioning for audiobooks every day, and I would record audiobooks as they came in. And that's what I thought I was going to do. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next thing I know, I started talking to the Chamber of Commerce at Council Bluffs about hosting a podcast for them. When I first started doing that, I did it for free.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't charge them for it because this was something that it was brand new for me and I didn't really have a good understanding and didn't feel like I could effectively charge for something that I didn't know how to do myself. But we figured it out pretty quick, and I figured out that, hey, this is all the same muscles from when I was doing radio. There's really no difference. I'm just not playing music 24 hours a day.
You don't have a station manager telling you should have played that commercial in 3 minutes and 30 seconds and not 3 minutes and 40 seconds. You cost us 10 seconds of advertising time.
Yeah, you can. That's a whole nother conversation that I'm trying not to get sued. So,
no, but I mean, no, but anybody that you talk to at radio, I listen to I watch your podcast quite a bit in the morning coffee, but I listen to the Morning Rush over in Des Moines. Travis Justice and Ross Peterson, they both came from.
They do a good job, by the way. I like Travis Justice. I think I think his show's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I listen to their stuff in the morning because I'm a sports guy. I'm a Hawkeye fan. I like to hear about Iowa State, what's going on. And Travis is in Omaha, Ross is in Des Moines. But, they got a pretty good pulse what's going on in the state of Iowa. But, they talk about the days when they worked for, KNX or WHO and KXNO and all that. It just kind of the politics behind radio station. And I'm not knocking a radio station, but, because what they charge their advertisers and what they're going to do, and they got to be able to show how they're paying the bills.
Well, here's what was just described to me a couple of weeks ago. And I don't care. I'm not in the industry anymore. So if you are still in radio, I know you're going to argue with me about this, but this is reality. Advertising on a radio station is the same as going duck hunting and going into the duck blind, sticking your shotgun through the top of it, pulling the trigger and hoping ducks are flying over when that happens. And that analogy was said to me. And I said, that is spot on right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but if you sit there and think about it, no, it is. And so, yeah, it said this empty target,
Right. And you spend enough money so you can pull the trigger enough times and the chances of you hitting the ducks increases. But that is the model.
Yeah.
where what I do now is targeted. What I do
Yes.
now is we can actually track that 90% of the views that we get are coming from the market from which the show is intended. And the other
Hmm.
10% come from within a driving distance to that market.
Hmm.
We don't get views and interactions from places outside of the area. We are hyper local, and this platform works for that.
Only reason you would is it's from somebody that's from the area that maybe doesn't live here now but wants to be connected.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'll call for what it is. I mean, I grew up listening to WHO when I was, when I was a kid and growing up, and so I bring them up. But
You didn't have a
I'm,
lot of options back then either. Where you were at, you probably couldn't get KKEZ out of Fort Dodge. I mean, that
oh
was,
yeah, because
oh,
Fort
did
Dodge,
you? Because that was the one we all listened to.
yeah. So if I want to listen to FM, depends if I want to listen to Rush on AM or
Right.
Rush Limbaugh or whatever I like to listen to. But it wasn't the platform that it's totally changed from what it was then to now. You didn't have the choices. I was a Hawkeye fan. Still am a Hawkeye fan. So you know what? Like I said, I know more about what's going on in Des Moines, Iowa City than I do Omaha. You know what? I'm a mile from Omaha. So, that kind of gets you an idea. I know what's going on in Council Bluffs. Care less really what's going on in Nebraska, in Omaha. It's just because of who I am and what I want to follow. It is no different, Todd. If you've got a friend that's a podcaster, I know that in Nebraska
Mm-hmm.
that has her show, guess what? She's talking to people in, Omaha and Bellevue and Auburn and Columbus and her areas, I don't know if it's the same. It's probably a similar format. I'm sure it's not the same,
No,
but
her model is a lot different, but it also works very, very well. And her name's Sheila Jenkinson, by the way, and the podcast is called Growing Small Town Nebraska, and it is the philosophy is the same.
mm,
Hers is audio only, but she's also X radio,
okay,
so she comes from the same cloth as me.
sure,
And that's why she is able to reach small towns the way that she is, because her career was there, and it's different. It's a different beast when you're talking to people that live in a small market. They need to know what you're doing for the community before they're ever going to spend $1 with you.
yeah. Well, that's I say you do a good job. We've talked about Carly a little bit, with getting down into Mills County, and I know I was on her show. I did her show last week. It was last week or 10 days. Her and me sat down
Mhm.
for 45 minutes and do that. In a lot of these small towns, small places are one have a voice, and what you're doing with your program and even with my podcast, it's a voice. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree with me. Not everybody's going to agree with you, or you have somebody on the show that I might say, well, why you got, and I'll tell you, so why do you have them on the show? And I've had that conversation with you once or twice. So,
Yeah.
but
You may have it again soon. The rodeo is coming back to Southwest Iowa. It is going to be at the Mid America Center in Council Bluffs. It is the Council Bluffs PRCA Rodeo, March 20th and 21st. Doors open at 6:30, rodeo kicking off at 7:30. And once it starts, the action is nonstop. This is a PRCA sanctioned competition, which means you're seeing legitimate high-level rodeo athletes right here in Council Bluffs. There's bareback riding, bull riding, team roping, the whole deal. And the Stellar Trick Riding Cowgirls are performing both nights, and Friday's Kids Night, so children under 12 get in free with a paid general admission adult, which makes this a great family night out. And tickets are cheap. They start at just $20. Grab yours at councilbluffsprcarodeo.com. How about it? Let's pack the Mid-America Center. Service Master Restore by Schmader, they know how hard it is to get back to normal after you've suffered serious property damage due to flooding, fire, smoke, and often leading to mold, and it may leave you with all sorts of questions about how to get your home or business back to normal. Service Master Restore by Schmader can restore your space by offering quality commercial and residential restoration services. Call 402-339-9911. You can always hear more from Travis on his podcast, Circle of Trades. You can find the video version on YouTube, the audio only version on Spotify, and a lot of other platforms. And I encourage you to go back and watch and listen. He's been doing this for a while, over 3 years now. Travis has been doing this podcast. Ton of great information and also a ton of great local people that he brings onto the show. So again, Circle of Trades is the podcast. This is Pottawattamie County Routes. And my name's Todd Studer. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning.